Hey, it's Jay. I wanted to extend a special thanks to those of you who have listened and left reviews on iTunes for this podcast. Please leave a review if you haven't done so already. We sincerely appreciate it. We're producing this show independently, and unfortunately, that is not free. We have to pay for digital hosting space, software, equipment, websites, and travel out of our own pockets. But we'd love to keep this show going as long as possible. Pledge your support by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/pledge. Thanks for your support and enjoy the show. Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by ScentLock Enforcer, episode number 185. Dave Graham and Jake Huff of the Huff Land Company, buying your piece of whitetail heaven. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by the ScentLock Enforcer, Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
No, Chuck Testa. No, Chuck Testa. No, Chuck Testa. And you're still listening to the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast, and trying to say that 3 times and not screw it up. This is Dr. Dave Samuel, and you're about to push play on one of the most informative Big Buck podcasts out there. Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Hannah Costello from Hall Brothers Outdoors, and you're about to push play on my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. My name is Jay, and I am thrilled that you are joining us once again, that you actually had the audacity to push that play button and actually listen to what we have to offer here, where we bring you the brightest and best deer hunters from across the country and deliver them in a manner that you can digest it so that you can use it in your playbook as well. And as usual, when I say we, I'm talking about me and my good friend Dusty Phillips from Ohio. What's going on, my friend?
No, it's last week of season here in Ohio, and there's a couple people I just got a text from actually this past week that laid the smack down on a big old chubby tines here in Ohio. So it's winding down. Shed season's coming upon us, and it's another way to get out in the woods, and spring turkey not too far away, Jay.
That is awesome, man. It feels like winter here in New England, and of course deer season ended quite a long time ago now. It seems like it's been forever. And you're still going in a lot of ways. I have turned my sights onto the coyote hunting, and I'm using the Fox Pro, and we bumped into our friends from Fox Pro, Abner Drunkenmiller and Al Morris, Big Al Morris, who has been on this show before, and we got to talk to him a little bit about coyote hunting. Well, I had never really gone coyote hunting. I've killed coyotes on random chances, but to actually go hunt them when I was purposely going to hunt them, and I've done the night hunting and all that stuff, and I've never actually connected with any of the calls that I had. Well, since I've picked up a Fox Pro, and we don't have a deal with Fox Pro at all, but since I've picked up a Fox Pro, and since I've actually hunted with Fox Pro, the last 2 days, we've called in dogs each day. It's blowing my mind, because before, I had nothing going on. I mean, I'm talking about years. And in 2 days with a Fox Pro, called in 2 dogs, all within shooting range. Absolutely blows my mind.
Craziness. Yeah, Fox Pro definitely, it's the sounds, and they've put the time in,
Yep.
They've got it figured out exactly what the creation of the sound should be and what the speakers should produce. And, man, it definitely will change the way you coyote hunt.
Yep. And I've got a good system going right now. I've been going out in the evening for like a 35, 40-minute sit, one set, hunting with a buddy of mine. He's working, he gets out of work, or I'm working, I get out of work. One of us picks the other up, and we go. And so far, man, it's been producing. It's just kind of a good way to end your day. Then you go home and do the rest of the stuff you got to do.
Right, absolutely. It's definitely healthy for your herd if you can eliminate some of the coyotes and as we talked before, you don't want to eliminate them all because then you're opening up your place for the wanderer coyotes to come in and re-herd in your area. So
Right. They know that. Like they'll have a larger litter. So you want to knock them down, but you don't want to eliminate them.
absolutely.
Right. Yep. Well, very good. Well, we this week, Dusty, we're going to be talking about whitetail properties and buying them. And I think in the back of our head, if you don't already own some property of your own that you manage on your own, we always consider down the road that you'd like to own a piece of your own property that isn't for living. It's for recreational use, for game management and land management and hunting. That's what someday I think we all want to do. So we decided to turn to a couple of experts in Iowa, and although we're going to be talking a lot about buying whitetail recreation property in Iowa, I think it is going to apply to buying land anywhere in the country in a lot of ways. And we're going to be speaking with Dave Graham and Jake Huff from the Huff Land Company. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. But before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week, Michigan says 9-township deer cull could begin by this weekend. This story was originally featured on the mlive.com website and was reported by Dominic Mastrangelo. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources could kill as many as 2,800 deer within a 9-township area over the next year after 2 farm-raised deer in Mecosta County tested positive for chronic wasting disease last month. The affected surveillance area covers a 5-mile radius and includes lands within the townships of Etna, Deerfield, Hinton, Mecosta, Morton, Montcalm, Cato, Winfield, and Reynolds, all in Mecosta and Montcalm counties. At this point, it remains unclear whether the CWD-positive deer came from a contained, privately owned deer farm or from the wild. Chad Stewart is a deer specialist with the DNR and said sharpshooters will be deployed to target areas by the end of the week. James Averill, a state veterinarian who led Wednesday's meeting, said an investigation into where the 2 infected deer came from is ongoing. Several local landowners are upset about the effect that this cull could have on the local deer population and may not let sharpshooters onto their property. In the meantime, the DNR is looking to prevent further spread of the disease, which can last in an infected area for decades. Idaho spending $650,000 to feed deer, elk, and antelope. This story was originally featured by the ABC Channel 6 KIVI-TV website and was reported by Steve Bertel. Idaho is spending about $650,000 this winter to feed elk, deer, and antelope in its 110 sites around the southern half of the state, according to Idaho Department of Fish and Game officials. The department on Wednesday says it's feeding about 10,000 elk, 10,000 deer, and 100 antelope. The sites are in areas where officials say an unusually severe winter is causing problems for big game. Officials say the number of elk being fed represents 7% of the state's elk population, while the number of deer being fed is less than 2%. Officials say the emergency feeding is intended to reduce damage to private crops, keep animals from roads, and provide nutrition. The reality is we are only reaching a very small percentage of the population, and hopefully that does those animals some good. But the impact is really isolated, said John Rachel, the state big game manager for Idaho Fish and Game. State officials say deer and elk herds have grown with several years of mild winters, but numbers could decline this winter. Washington House panel okays higher payout for deer, elk, and damage. This story was originally featured on the CapitalPress.com website and was reported by Don Jenkins. Washington state lawmakers are considering legislation to double the maximum payout for crops lost to deer and elk and also compensate farmers for damage by the ungulates to fences and irrigation systems. Instead of $10,000, a Washington farmer could receive up to $20,000 a year under a program administered by the State Department of Fish and Wildlife. House Bill 1399 also would raise the damage threshold for filing a claim from $1,000 to $1,500. This threshold is being raised to minimize frivolous claims. Farmers who have worked with the WDFW to prevent damage by deer and elk are all eligible to file claims. The compensation program also covers commercial crops, pastures, and Christmas trees, but it does not pay for damages to other property. The state set aside $150,000 annually to settle all claims, though the state has never exceeded that amount, according to an analysis of the bill. The agency said it could not estimate how much more the state would pay out under the new bill. WDFW Game Division supports increasing maximum payouts. A farmer must report to WDFW within 72 hours of discovering damage. To then file a claim, a producer must hire an adjuster and submit tax records, business records, and insurance records. There are also other bills in the state of Washington to address damage by elk and deer. Interestingly enough, there is no bill or law that would require these farmers to open their land to public hunting before they can file a claim related to wildlife crop damage. Maybe there should be. Maryland teen fatally shoots deer after it busts through the front door of home. This story was originally featured on the Fox 5 DC website and was reported by Anjali Hemphill. A Maryland teenager thought an intruder was breaking into his house when he heard the front door kicked in. Instead, he found himself face to face with a deer standing in his living room. All the homes on his Frederick Street, it is believed this deer specifically picked Ryan Manchester's house to barge into for one reason: breeding season. We had just cut down our Christmas tree the day before, so we were pretty sure that a doe had sprayed our Christmas tree and that the buck smelled that scent, said Manchester. For several minutes, the 8-point buck that weighed over 100 pounds flailed around his living room, tearing it apart. That is when Ryan decided to call 911 and then his father at work. John Manchester, his father, said his son told him, "There's a deer in our living room and I need to know where the keys to the guns are, so that is a lot to take in," he said. Ryan said animal control officers were not able to come right away and the damage was getting worse. He grabbed his father's 9mm handgun and fired off 2 shots, hitting the deer in the head and chest. It died on the living room floor. Animal control officers arrived a short time later. It is estimated the deer caused about $4,500 in damage at the home. Animal control officers said while every situation is different and the 17-year-old did not do anything wrong, they recommend not engaging with the animal, to get outside and to contact your local authorities to handle it. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Dave and Jake.
Dave Graham, Jake Huff, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friends?
Great. Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you.
We're psyched to have you. We're going to touch on a topic that is, I would think, very near and dear to many deer hunters' hearts, that they may not always execute this idea, but it is certainly in the back of everybody's head that someday you get to buy your own piece of property that you can call your own and hunt it and do whatever you want and manage it as you please. And that's why we're bringing you guys in today from Huff Land Company to give us the ins and outs of how to go about that. And you guys are the professionals, so we're very interested to hear what you have to say about all that kind of thing when we're thinking about buying whitetail properties.
Well, we're excited to tell you.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Dave, let's start with you. Where are you from and where do you call home?
From Cedar Falls, Iowa. Lived here most of my life. Grew up in a smaller town south of here, but did a lot of traveling as a younger man. Through my 20s, I worked in the fishing industry as a rep, and so I did a lot of traveling. I lived in northern Minnesota for a while, but my passion for deer hunting and pheasant and turkey kind of brought me back here, and not to mention my wife. But I love Northeast Iowa, Southern Iowa. It's truly God's country to us.
What did you like the most?
I got a picture in my head, and it's hard to describe that picture. But
okay,
sitting out in the woods. Number one, my whole family enjoys it. My whole family is passionate about being in the outdoors, and whether it be hunting or my wife's not huge into hunting, but she loves to go looking for sheds and, loves to hear the stories of when I take my son hunting. And, I have a farm that I hunt, and it's by West Union, Iowa. And, you're sitting there in the morning, turkeys start gobbling. And I mean, you truly know that there's a higher power, I believe, when you're sitting there and it all just kind of comes together.
Yeah. There's a special moment when you're just sitting there watching the sunrise. Yeah. And
just, this particular property has deep ravines and creeks, and it's just everything you want. I'd love to be able to buy something like that someday. It just, I could spend days up there.
Right. Gotcha. Jake, what about you? Where are you from?
Kind of the same story. Born and raised in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Okay. Graduated from Cedar Falls High School. After high school, I went to work for the family construction business. So, not to mention as a young kid, I kind of got drugged to work a little bit, even when I didn't want to. But it served me well. I learned a lot about construction, and then about 2002, started into full-time real estate, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So haven't really left the area. Still live, now I live out in the country outside northwest of Cedar Falls just a little bit. But our office is here in Cedar Falls. It just most of my family's here, so it really does. It feels like home. So.
Gotcha.
Really no desire to go anywhere else.
How did you guys get into real estate?
Yeah, the thing about real estate that I was really attracted to, there's so much opportunity. As a construction worker, you're always kind of dependent on what the guy next to you was doing. If they were slacking, it kind of put the workload on you, and it really got kind of tiresome, quite honestly. And so the nice thing about real estate that attracted me to it was the fact that, I got to kind of call my own shots. You're an independent contractor. You kind of get to put your own plan into place. And, there's some ups and downs. There's no guarantees. It's a strictly commission job, but I just like the challenge of that. It's just it's a mental challenge. And I think that, my work ethic will pull me through, when things get tough. But there's a lot of opportunity in it. You get to meet a lot of neat people, see a lot of great places. And quite honestly, it doesn't take a whole lot of money to get into it. When you think of the millions of dollars of inventory that we have at our disposal, we don't have any carrying costs on any of that stuff. So, it can be a really rewarding business, I guess. And that's, kind of what drew me to it initially. So.
Gotcha. Dave, how about yourself?
I grew up a realtor's kid. My mom was a realtor for 20-some years, and she did strictly residential. But, living in the same place, same town I do now, got to, I knew all the people in the industry. One day, Jake and Clint called me into the office and wanted to meet with me, and I had no idea what it was about. I figured they wanted some free tree stands or something like that.
We didn't put him in a headlock.
No, there was no strong arming or anything like that. But my passion is the outdoors, and man, why not try to make a living doing it, and so it all made sense to me. And Jake has been an amazing mentor to me, and he's taught me so much, and it's like he said, it's an extremely rewarding business. You get to meet some great people, and that's kind of where we take pride, and it's not over at the closing table with somebody. But, I've had people that say, hey, I'm only buying this property if you hunt it with me, and it's just stuff like that's awesome.
That's cool. That's a good gig.
Yeah.
Just to kind of go back to that a little bit was, like I had mentioned before, I got licensed in 2002 to sell real estate.
Yeah. Got
my broker's license in 2005. Started a business with another guy doing, a residential office. And then went to work sold my residential business to my partner, and was kind of starting to look for something different. I didn't like the direction that residential real estate was going. And I grew up loving hunting and fishing. Really kind of, it was about the time I was about to turn 40. So, I just figured, there's only so much time in life. And the residential stuff, I could do it and make money doing it, but it just, my heart wasn't in it. And so I knew that we needed to do something different. And that's, after a 2-year stint with another company, decided in 2013 that we would start, Huff Land Company. And one of the reasons why we called Dave in is because that we knew that he had the same values that we do. And that's important to us. We know that our desire is not to be the largest land company, in the world. We're focused on Iowa, and that's what's important to us. And that we knew that Dave had it in him to really be a great agent, take care of people, first and foremost, and, put them before his own, before himself, I guess, and his, really working for people and really helping them out. So, and his knowledge of the outdoors just kind of fit in. That's where we're just a little bit different from other real estate companies here locally. Is most of the people that work here either live on acreages or will be soon, they kind of have that country life in their blood. And, that's kind of our desire, is to have like-minded, agents here at the office that put the customer first. And we knew that Dave had that in him, so we're glad to get him. So
I'm blushing over here, guys.
You mean he hasn't told you this in private before, Dave?
No. This is the first time I've ever gotten praise. So.
Wow.
Thanks, come on. No, that's
you must have
about bonus time for that guy.
Yeah.
My
He's
goodness.
taking down notes. I don't know what he's doing.
Well, at the next board meeting, you'll have to praise him and say what a good job he did on the big buck
We
race.
might have to edit that part out.
I'll have to put that on social media. I'll get that out there.
So is there enough business to be had in Iowa to support a land real estate company?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It takes a little bit to get in, it's not come easy. And so I guess the thing that I will say is that since we are kind of diversified, although my heart may not be in residential like it is land, it has served me well, and it serves our agents well, because everybody knows somebody that's looking for a house. And we can do the residential business as well as anybody else. It's not, the first thing in our heart, I guess you'd say.
Right.
So we have the ability to help folks with residential. The acreages come easy for us because we identify with that lifestyle. And then, of course, recreational and hunting property, which, most of the people probably care about that are listening. That is a little bit tougher in Northeast Iowa as compared to Southern Iowa. Southern Iowa's just got more land for sale down there. The prices tend to be, $800 to $1,000 an acre cheaper than Northeast Iowa. So it does present some challenges. We've got to just continue pushing our message and getting a lot of the local stuff here and making sure we're dominating our market here locally. And then, of course, we'll go anywhere in the state, to help anybody buy or sell. So, but it's becoming more difficult. That you're seeing more companies popping up, I should say, all over the place. So, I think being diversified is the important piece of it, so that when maybe something's a little bit slow, you're able to slide over to a different part of the real estate business and carry on. But our heart is land, acreages for sure.
Gotcha.
So,
all right. So your heart's there. It sounds like a general interest as well, that in the types of property that you're selling, it's like you've gone into a niche that you really enjoy, but there's also a diversification where that's not you're not held by just selling land. There you do all the other real estate too. So
yeah, absolutely. The thing that I think is important is that if you have a $500,000 house on 40 acres or 80 acres, one of the things that I see, for us, is the fact that we have done a lot of residential transactions. We know how that transaction works. We've done it, dozens and dozens and dozens of times. So we've got that reputation. We have the know-how to get that done. But at the same time, we can also promote that lifestyle of living in the country and what that means. It's special to own a chunk of dirt, land, whether your house is on it or not. It's truly a blessing to be able to have that opportunity. A lot of other countries don't have that.
Gotcha.
And that's a part of our founding. And to me, it's one of the more important things, when you think about a lot of the stuff that's going on in the country right now. And I tell you, if you've got a piece of ground to walk or to spend time on, I think it really grounds you. I think a lot of people have lost touch, with what that means. And if they'd spend a little more time, out in the country a little bit, away from everything else, I think maybe people's focus might change a little bit. But
Gotcha.
I guess that's just my opinion.
I have a million questions for you guys, and I think Dusty, most likely his brain's turning over there too with a bunch of questions. As you're talking, I'm thinking about all these things that I really would like to know about that I didn't realize I really wanted to know about until we started talking about it. Let's expand a little bit about just Iowa in general. You see, you have a very good understanding and knowledge of the state of Iowa. Can you describe in a little more detail what the landscape is in different regions of Iowa? And if we're thinking about buying property in Iowa to hunt on, where would a hunter go? I mean, what's the best, what's the least best, or what's the perceived best, perceived least best?
Well, I think Southern Iowa gets obviously the most attention just because of the some of the TV shows that are out there. And so I think, most of those originate in Southern Iowa, which, I mean, it's a big deer mecca. It just is the way that the landscape is, the rolling hills, the ground tends not to be as productive as central and northeast Iowa. Therefore, you tend to see more CRP contracts, bigger chunks of timber, just because the ground, it just doesn't work as well for planting crops like it does in the central and northeast part. So I think that's why you see more companies and more land for sale in Southern Iowa. Great deer hunting opportunities, absolutely. Some pretty solid income, and return on investments if that's what you're looking for in a recreation or hunting property. As you start to creep north of, say, Interstate 80, the ground gets significantly better, more suitable for row crop farming. So you tend not to see a lot of, hunting properties pop up. And if you do, they normally go for a lot more money because guys don't want to have to travel. They'll normally produce a little more income, but the price per acre will be significantly higher. As you kind of get probably into the northeast, say Fayette, Clayton, Allen McKee, Wenatchee, Howard, some of those counties that really, it gets very hilly and can be very rugged. But again, pretty fertile soil for the most part. A little bit bigger chunks of timber. It grows actually probably some of the best, walnut and oak timber that you'll find since the ground's a little bit better in northeast Iowa. Prices are a little higher, of course, in northeast Iowa, but that's kind of how we see it, is that Southern Iowa is going to probably always be a little less money, but it kind of depends on where your buyers are coming from and how they're looking at things to what fits into them. Some guys they just don't have the 2-hour drive to get to Southern Iowa every time they want to hunt. And so those guys are looking for something different. And, there's plenty of opportunities around, but in the central part of the state, it's a little bit harder because you don't have the big timber tracts like you will more to the north and to the south of actually where we are. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, I guess.
Okay.
Most people that hunt love to fish. So, you look at Southern Iowa and it's plastered with farm ponds, all over the place. And then, but you go to Northeast Iowa and you have trout streams. So, it's a very different landscape. Like Jake said, you get to Northeast Iowa and you're talking steep bluffs, deep ravines, waterfalls, that kind of stuff. And then Southern Iowa, you got more of the rolling hills and that kind of stuff. But, we have a place up in Northeast Iowa, actually. And so we'll deer hunt or turkey hunt in the morning, and then we hit the Mississippi River in the afternoon.
Oh, cool.
That's just kind of a good way to fill the day with the outdoors,
Right. It sounds like a sportsman's paradise in a lot of ways. So if we're in Southern Iowa, the rolling hills, you're saying that that's more or less some of the better deer hunting, and cheaper property overall?
Yeah. It's, prices have definitely dropped in Southern Iowa in the last couple of years. They're steadily going back up.
Okay.
But I think one of the problems is a couple of years ago we had a pretty bad EHD breakout down there, and lost a lot of the deer herd. And it was almost instantaneous when the price started to go down, and then Northeast Iowa started to go up. They're starting to level off a little bit, but it's still cheaper per acre down in Southern Iowa right now.
Okay. All right. Very, very interesting. Now, when I assume you get calls from all over the country of people that may be considering Iowa, right?
Yep.
What are some of the top subjects or questions that people ask you when they're thinking about buying a piece of whitetail property somewhere in Iowa?
Everybody's kind of got a different take on it. Some people are just truly worried about, big bucks. Other people look at it as more of what can I get for a return on investment, so they're looking for a mix of, timber and crop ground. Some people are just in it strictly for recreation. The thing in Iowa that you have to remember is that, there's a lottery they have to go through to get a bow tag. So just because, somebody from out of state owns ground in Iowa doesn't mean they're guaranteed a bow tag every year. Okay. So, it's, and that's a lot of times that kind of turns some people off. We're not an over the counter type state. Yeah, we get a variety of questions. Everybody, and that's the important thing, is to find out who you're talking to and what goals they really want to achieve. What is this? How do you see yourself using the property? And then we can kind of go through the tedious task of trying to match them up with something. And that's not as easy as it might seem if you're really analyzing everything and making sure they're making a good decision. It's actually quite difficult. We actually need a lot more listings. We got more buyers than we got listings. So
really, oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And why is that? Why is the market that way?
And when I say that, I'm talking mostly central and northeast Iowa. There's normally good farms listed throughout, southern Iowa. Our presence is not quite as strong there as it will be in the future, but there's still opportunities to take buyers down there and show them some nice stuff. But like I'd mentioned before, there's a whole lot of people that just don't want to drive real far, or don't, maybe they're 9-to-5 guys and they only hunt on the weekends, or and they need something close, and it's easier to get to if they've got kids and all these things. So, it's everybody's kind of got a different use or purpose or goal. And, I guess that's kind of that's what we're here for, is to figure that out and make sure that they get matched up with the best, property that they can find. And sometimes that takes a while. Really, it's not something that, if you're planning on buying something for the fall, you ought to be looking really pretty hard right now. It could even take a year or two before the right place actually comes up. And, I guess that's kind of the tough part, for us is, keeping a list of people that are interested, making sure they're still interested when something does come up. Because if it's priced right, it normally doesn't last too long at all.
Okay. Gotcha.
You asking what do people ask for? Some of them are very specific. Like I want a farm that's predominantly oak and, with ridges or whatever, something that's already basically turnkey. Others, I got an email not too long ago from a good friend of mine, actually, and he just said he lives out of state. And he says, "Hey, find me a farm." And I said, "Well, you need to be a little more specific. What do you want?" He goes, "Okay, I want the best hunting land in Iowa with a house on it." He goes, "Can you find it?" And I'm like, "Heck yeah, man!" So it's just everybody's different. Obviously the guy that wants the best hunting land in Iowa is going to have a little bit of all that stuff with, whether it's oaks or food plots and a turnkey or that's what's exciting about the land side of it is nothing is the same. It doesn't get monotonous at all. And it's fun. We're taking people through, some of the best land in the country and they want to buy it. And that's a lot of times people are just in awe and ready to sign. And there might be something that we see on the property that really doesn't fit them or might be a downfall, So sometimes we gotta, as much as we hate to, we gotta steer them away because it's not in their best interest.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like what are some of those downfalls that you have identified that might not be right for that particular person?
There's tons of things. One thing I see a lot is, not only do we sell land, but we're extremely passionate about hunting and we do it a lot and we kind of understand, access routes and that kind of stuff. One of the things I see a lot of is, maybe it's got some CRP on the south. It's on, the whole property's on north of the road. There's CRP on the south, and then there's a creek north of that. And then there's the timber, but there's no easement from the north. So how are you going to get in there? Being unnoticed, just little things like that. Obviously floodplain, that's pretty easy, but some people have dreams of maybe buying it and then building on it someday, and it's just not it's not feasible. And you certainly don't want them to see their dreams literally washed away in a flood. But I mean, there's so many things that come up. But I would say access and easements are probably the most common.
Okay, gotcha.
What about if you got somebody that's new into hunting that has a little jingle in their pocket? Does it pay for you to be able to explain to them that the hunting scenario is not the best on the piece of property they want about purchase?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, our job is to have the client's interest above ours and anybody else's. So if that's what they're going to do or want to do is hunt a property, I'm going to be straightforward with them and say, look, I don't think this is a good fit. Or, depending on what their circumstance is, maybe it's, something where they can't get too far away, where they can, travel distances, maybe maximum of an hour. Then we'll kind of get into, here's what we can do to make it a better piece of land. Is it priced right now to do these things? Whether it be a ridge cut or food plots, planting trees. It just, like I said, every property is different. But if a client calls me and he wants or she wants, great deer hunting land, that's what I'm going to find them. And either they're ready to buy the perfect hunting ground that's turnkey, or they're willing to take some time and grow it into that property.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Very cool. So let's say I call you up and I say I want a great piece of whitetail property. What types of questions do you start asking that client when you're talking to them?
Probably the first thing is budget.
Okay.
What they're willing to spend. Sometimes people have a total, number budget. Sometimes they have an acre. They think they got to have a certain number of acres. So, I kind of start there just to kind of figure out, what kind of a budget are we working with? From there, I think you kind of look into specific location. Do they have any idea of where they want to be? Obviously, some people that's a bigger deal than others. Some people are just, they don't really care as long as, it's provides the best hunting opportunities. The huntability is another one. I think Dave just kind of hit on that a little bit. I'll ask them about what their expectations are for income potential. Do they need to see a certain amount of money coming in, whether that's through, row crop, renting it out, or maybe from CRP income or timber harvest. Just really what their expectations are for income, okay. Whether they're buying it on their own or if they're going to potentially go in with another person. Last thing you want to do is be running around the countryside showing somebody, hunting properties and then find out, well, I got to talk to my partner about it. So I'll normally find out if they're the ones making the decision on their own or if there's going to be a group decision made. Right. And it can also boil down to, sometimes they look at it as everybody might look at it a little different, but normally they're looking at it either from a quality or quantity standpoint. On our website, we've got the property down in Tama County that's $1,100 an acre. Well, that provides a great all around recreational experience. Deer, turkeys, the Iowa River's right there, but the income potential's limited due to the Wetlands Reserve program easement. So a lot of these things are just important to find out kind of what their expectations are. And then to be able to kind of narrow some properties down from there, obviously being the fact that Iowa, it's not the biggest state, but, we can spend several hours, from one place to the next. It's going to be important to find out, really what their expectations are and what they hope to, what kind of goals they have in owning that property. So that can kind of guide us. But okay. Financing is another one. So if they talk to a banker, most people, it's a different type of financing than obviously a residential or an acreage property. So we normally have to hash those things out too, how they plan on paying for it, and give some suggestions if they need it, and see where it takes us.
Okay, gotcha. Let's talk a little bit about income potentials for some of these properties. You touched on these CRP, row crop, timber. What types of income are potentially there? A hypothetical property. What are the incomes that can come off of some of these properties for timber and row crops? It's an interesting perspective to think that you could have some generating some revenue here.
Yeah. From the timber aspect, I know enough to kind of give a little bit of guidance to them as far as what types of trees are on the property. I could probably give them an estimate of, how many board feet in a tree, what that means, what that equates to financially per tree, that kind of stuff. But normally, if we see that there's a fair amount of timber value, we'll normally recommend that they get an appraisal done on the timber. And you could be anywhere, if you just did a small little cut, several thousand to there's been some really big walnut sales that are in the tens of thousands, almost $100,000.
Wow.
They can really range quite a bit. And walnut I use is the most valuable species that we've got here in Iowa. But there's maple and oak, and just everyone's kind of got a different price per board foot, and it's something to consider. Most guys don't even think about it when they're looking at a property is the timber value.
Right.
They just want to have trees to put a stand in, and they don't even really think about it. But it's an important piece of the puzzle. Some of the challenges with a hunting property is that if we're talking row crop income, a lot of times it's not a huge piece of tillable so that presents problems that'll rule some of the guys with big equipment out. So it's going to take a guy that's got smaller equipment. Not saying that guys with smaller equipment have less money, but a lot of times it's, they can't afford to pay the big rent prices. So, just kind of knowing the general area in which you're in can, the price that you can get per acre from a tenant farming your ground can vary pretty substantially, anywhere from probably, I would have to say there's not much being rented under $200 an acre still, and probably some that might still be at $350 an acre for cash rent for row crop.
Okay.
So, depending on how many acres you got there, and then you got, CRP, and that, that kind of takes a combination of what the county cash rent prices are, and takes that into consideration. So it's normally pretty comparable. And of course, the cash rent prices in Iowa for tillable are coming down. So that CRP is going to be going down. But we've had CRP contracts. I knew one in Butler County that was $400 an acre to put into CRP, a 15-year program. And so that's income you can count on. It's good for the wildlife. If you like pheasant hunting, turkeys like it, the deer like it. Another one that sometimes people don't think about is the WRP program if you're in the right area, which is the Wetlands Reserve program. You got to own the ground for 7 years, but that's normally a one-time payment. If you put it on a lifetime easement, you're supposed to get fairly close to market value. A lot of times that'll, if you own it for 7 years, a lot of times that can pay for, quite honestly, most of the property. Now there'll be some stipulations with that easement on things you can and can't do, but it's still yours. You still own it, and you still get to hunt it. You retain all control. You don't have to turn it over to public hunting or anything weird like that. But it's just another piece of the puzzle that you get the right place, you could be eligible for that as well. So.
Gotcha. Very interesting. So there really is a way to have you buy a residential income property. There's almost ways to have land income properties to support the cost of, I don't know, if the taxes or a mortgage or things like that. And it sounds like you wouldn't necessarily you'd be the owner, but you wouldn't necessarily be doing the work. You'd be renting out your land to somebody else to do these things, or planting row crops and renting it out per acre. Or how does the timber work? Do you just have a logger come in and give you a certain piece per board or something?
Kind of how we would handle that. Nothing against the loggers, but probably the safest thing to do is to call a forester. And, we know some of those people that we recommend, and they basically take care of the whole process. They'll come give you, because I've actually gone out on these with a forester just to learn how they do it. It's quite interesting. It's pretty amazing, actually. Those are very knowledgeable people. It's kind of fun to spend time with them. And so you go through and you kind of get an estimate of, and you go through, you mark the trees, and then you take measurements on projected board feet, and you kind of add them all up, and you give the landowner an estimate of what a potential sale could look like. And if they think that looks good, then the forester will send it out for bid. And it's normally a lump sum payment, check signed, and a earnest check given to the landowner. And the contracts can vary from a year to 2 years for that logger to get in there and harvest those trees. But having that safety net of the forester, they do a great job. Is they're only going to send it out to loggers that they know and trust. And that I even had one where a guy said you can only do this while the ground's frozen, and it has to be after January 10th when deer season ends here, and the logger was fine with that. So you got to be careful that you don't just, and like I said, I'm it's nothing against loggers. They're great, but for most people, I think, that don't know any better, it might just be safer to talk with a forester and go that route. I've never had anybody say that they wish they hadn't called a forester. So it normally works out pretty good.
That's fascinating. I had no idea that it was like how elaborate that was. That's actually very interesting. That's a whole other show, I think, right there.
Well, they're interesting people too. I mean, they spend so much time in the woods. They're a wealth of knowledge. It's amazing, what those guys know. Even I got a pretty good, rapport with a couple of the district foresters that work for the Iowa DNR here, and they're just some of the neatest people. Very knowledgeable, nice people, just want to help, answer a lot of questions. They're a great resource, honestly. If you're a forester, you probably should,
Yeah. What's walnut going for these days? Any idea?
Geez, it could be, I've heard veneer grade, prices is, much as $8 a board foot, hundreds of board feet in a tree, which is another thing, the forester will always ask plan is. And so he'll take that into consideration on the cut too. So,
okay.
Most generally they're not going to take 14 inches is kind of the smallest diameter that the loggers even really want. And it's a real learning experience. And you always tell the landowners that have been that experience, because they're pretty knowledgeable. They've spent some time with that forester on their property, learning about the value in trees, what to cut, when to cut them, what happens when you cut them, what comes back in. Do I need to replant? There's a whole plan to it, and it is quite interesting.
Gotcha.
A lot to think about.
And can you estimate this stuff ahead of time before you buy, or is this something you have to figure out later?
Most guys just don't, for whatever reason, but they should. And for taxes as well, that's a good thing to have, because it's taxes capital gains. So if you've got an appraisal done, that'll help you, when you file a tax return as well. So
right.
It's just an all around good idea and a good learning experience as a landowner.
Right. And what can you expect from the WRP program for revenue? Or you said that it sometimes is almost the cost.
It's a lump sum payment.
Yeah.
And so what I've seen in the past is it normally reflects current market value.
Okay.
So imagine that, you own the property for 7, 10, 15 years. And all of a sudden, and most generally, I mean, you can't just do that for any property. It has to meet certain criteria. Most generally, it's got to be something along a river or waterway. Mm-hmm. The program is designed for soil erosion, to slow that down, being grazed or row crop or, cleared all the way to the river's edge. So it just helps out with erosion, and that's, and endangered species is another one that they'll take into consideration. So
okay,
you retain ownership.
You retain 100%. Ownership. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Well, the thing is that you have to remember about stuff that qualifies for WRP is that it's going to be something that floods a lot, obviously. So it's really it's a recreational property, right? So to me, it makes perfect sense if you own the property, you use it for recreation. If it's not already, it probably doesn't produce a bunch of income right now because it floods anyhow. So it's not going to be a big row crop income producer. So a lot of times it's a good idea to enroll it, and then you still get to use the recreational, you still get to hunt it, and it's always going to have value. So if you get paid for it, basically you almost get paid out, or maybe even make a little money on it. And you still retain it. When you go to sell it, it's still going to have value. Guys are still going to be willing to pay, $1,000 an acre. Some of it's gone. I've seen, $1,600 an acre it'll sell for, even after the WRP easement's been on it.
Right. So,
the thing that's important is if you're going to own a recreational property, you need to have a history of, trail camera pictures, anything that you may have harvested on the property, turkeys, deer, ducks, fish, anything, so that you've got a history, because a lot of times that's what helps us sell the property is, if you can show how people are using that property and they're having fun doing it, that's always going to have value.
Definitely. So now you bring up an interesting point right there. So you're actually using trail cam photos and harvest reports, kill reports from those pieces of property to sell in your niche, your whitetail properties. So how does that go? So you have a landowner. How many pictures are you talking about, and what's the time frame in which they're keeping these records?
It depends on the time of year, honestly, because if we're listing a property right at the beginning of fall, we need those pictures as soon as possible. And it just depends on how diligent those people were with the scouting. Obviously, if we list a property right now, we're still going to see what they have available, what they harvested off the land, but we're also going to do our homework with, our scouting and our cameras and just to find out what the property has on it or is capable of having on it. But yeah, I've never had anybody say, oh no, I don't want people knowing that I shot that here. Their goal is to sell the property if they call us. So they're more than willing to give us the history of the property. And, I had a lady, I listed a farm and she wanted to give me the mount, to take back to the office to show people. I said, well, that's not necessary. We can just take a picture of it. But, and usually, they're maybe selling it to move on to bigger, better, or their passion might be to just, hobby farm or something like that, where they're just doing food plots. And
gotcha.
And if people are thinking about selling, it would be a good idea to get a hold of, I would say us or an agent that they trust and start planning for that sale. I think that's important. Just shooting from the hip and all of a sudden pulling the trigger isn't always the best recipe. And I think, unfortunately, that's what we see a lot of times is if we'd have just had a little conversation ahead of time, it may have, made a substantial difference in the price that it sells for or how quickly it sells, because the more history we have on the property or the more that we know about it, the easier it is for us to feed that information to potential buyers. And face it, when you're spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars or even $100,000, it's a big commitment and you don't want to make a mistake. And I think that seems to be the mindset of most buyers at the end of the day is they don't want to make a mistake. It's kind of something that you can't just ask your parents, hey, how do you buy recreational farms? Well, most of them haven't done it.
Right.
So it's a little unknown to them, but, or as a seller, how can I maximize, the sale? And unfortunately, if you call us and say, I want to list it in a couple of weeks, you absolutely will do that. And we will spend, our own resources, put our own cameras up, spend time there on the property to try and learn what's going on there so that when we're showing it, we can speak knowledgeably about the property. But normally the hardest ones to sell are the ones that you don't have any history and people ask you questions and, you just have to say, well, I'm not really sure, and that's difficult.
And typically what that would be is, a farmer has 500 acres and he wants to sell this 40-acre chunk of woods. He's never hunted it. He has no interest in trail cameras, but he doesn't use it for anything. And, he'll want to sell it. So there's where we really have to be kind of, get in there, get our cameras up, and do the best we can. Obviously, you know, this time of year, I have cameras on properties right now because I'm watching for the sheds to drop. But once they're dropped, you know, then we kind of switch our focus to turkeys. We're still looking at the deer herd, but you know, people want to see pictures of big bucks, and
Sure.
you know, they don't want to see a bunch of does, even though that's important, you know. But
the does don't sell it like the bucks.
No, that's right.
I imagine. Right. Well, now this is an interesting perspective too. So we've talked about kind of what a buyer has to start thinking about. But how do you, as a real estate agent that's going to sell this piece of property, put a valuation on a piece of property that you need to put to market? How do you decide what it's worth?
It's kind of complicated, really. That's the hardest part, I think, of what we do is, you know, kind of taking what the seller wants to get accomplished. You know, I know this may come as a surprise, but a lot of times they think that their property's worth more than it really is. And kind of, you know, getting them to see, you know, what surrounding properties have sold for. You know, it takes a lot of analysis, and a lot of thinking, about each individual property, because each one's unique. You know, there's not many of them that are alike. And so you kind of have to take the characteristics and the assets and the, you know, kind of the flaws of each property and kind of, you know, blend that all together with your past experience and what some of the other stuff is sold for. You know, but it's you know, normally it's not, hey, you need to list at this price. It's a range. And we say, you know, here's the aggressive end and here's the not so aggressive end, you know, and then we kind of, nobody's good enough to say exactly what a property's going to sell for, because, you know, the thing is that, you know, people that have the money will determine what that property's worth. And, you know, it's basically, I just tell them it's our job to market your property to the best of our ability. We can control that marketing end of it. We don't control the market. You know, you put your best foot forward and, you put it out there and see how the public responds to it, and you make adjustments as needed. But you know, it's just kind of a compilation of several different things with surrounding sales, what your farm's got to offer, you know, and within that, you know, the income, the accessibility, all those different things kind of start to factor in. You know, again, that's where that history comes in. It's a little easier to get a little bit more money or shorter market time if they have a good history. So, you know, it's kind of a variety of things.
Gotcha. It must be difficult, I would think, to know exactly what's right, because unlike residential real estate, you've got multiple comparables that you can reference. Whereas on land, you don't have a lot of comparables, so you have to kind of go piece by piece of what you knew to be true from other pieces of property and then put it all together and see what happens.
Absolutely. You know, and I mean, it's a farm across the road could have a you know, CSR rating for their tillable at 85, and then you get on the other side and it could be quite a bit lower. So, you know, that's going to affect the value. But yeah, it's definitely easier to pull comps on residential, but you know, it takes a lot of homework, and like Jake said, you know, a lot of people think it's worth more. Very few think it's worth less, but our job is to get them a fair market value on it. And so hopefully they like what we have to say. And, you know, again, our job is to have their best interest in mind. So we're going to do our best to give it to them.
Right. Gotcha. So my wife is a big fan of the show Fixer Upper, right? And it's dragged me into the world of that whole Fixer Upper thing. All right. And to the point where I actually handmade a beautiful country farmhouse table for Christmas because that's what you wanted. So that's what I made. If you take that whole idea where you buy a house that's really falling apart, needs a lot of work, and you can, with the right help, you can go in and turn it into something good, but you have to have a vision. Does that same thing happen with land where it's overgrown, nobody's been paying attention to it, but with some time, you can go in there and probably at a good price turn that into a really good piece of property?
The answer to your question would be that vision is huge. I mean, you know, we talked to a guy today that when he bought one of his first farms, you know, they were looking at a farm and it wasn't real pretty, but, you know, through a little bit of vision, casting and talking through it, you know, guy made a plan, of what he would do. And, he ended up buying it. A lot of other people were looking past it, ended up being a really good investment for him. He turned it for a pretty good profit a few years down the road. But vision, being able to see stuff is very important. And as agents, that's where we're constantly learning too. We don't have all the answers all the time, but I like to think that every time we do a transaction, we get just that much smarter. And helping people to see what something could be is big. Otherwise, it's kind of like our job to be a business partner of sorts, and to be able to not just help match them up to buy the right property, but vision, seeing that, like you were talking about how they're doing that on Fixer Upper with the residential stuff. But it is very much the same. It is a lot about vision and the knowledge, to help give direction is also very important. So, but yeah, that's a good comparison.
Okay.
You talking about Fixer Upper? I believe it was Jake that just not too long ago had a call to go look at a farm and just assumed that this particular tillable land was in CRP, and it actually wasn't. They just had let it grow. And unfortunately, that's income property for that person selling the land. But it's going to take some work, because for the buyer, there's obviously more value in the tillable, depending on the person. But it wasn't enrolled in a CRP program, so they were making $0 off of it, and just a beautiful farm. But everyone could use a little fine touch,
Gotcha. So everything has these. It's like, I guess, buying any house. Nothing's ever perfect. Even the ones that were newly constructed, right? There's always something that's not quite right.
Yep.
So how do you go about the habitat when you look at these things? You look at these pieces of property. You look at accessibility. You look at revenue. You look at potential sales for a WRP program.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at the income side as a business proposal. But what about the habitat that you're looking at for the species itself? How much of that plays in, other than game camera photos and things like that? Are you trying to put together some kind of a habitat plan here as well, even though you're not technically game managers, you're not foresters, but you kind of have to have a sense of it?
A lot of the times we'll get a farm that, like I said, they all need a little bit of tweaking,
a little bit of jack of all trades, master of none on some cases. Normally that experience that just comes from being out in the woods, seeing how animals operate in different environments, what they like, what they don't like. We can share our past experience with, and at the end of the day, we don't have all the answers, but normally we can find the people that do have the right answers. And I think that's important, to know what you don't know, and get them in touch with somebody that really is an actual, expert in that habitat field, whatever that might be. But obviously in the timber industry, that forester, that knowledgeable forester, the guys from Pheasants Forever, the biologists there, wealth of knowledge, turning people on to QDMA. I think those are all great resources that we'll always lean on and kind of point people towards. The NRCS or the FSA office, we normally always recommend that they stay in touch with those people as far as programs that are available to them, and just getting to know those folks, so that if the opportunity does come up, they'll remember that landowner, expressing interest in a certain program. So sometimes you just got to be careful that you're giving good advice, and at the end of the day, if you don't have the right answer, you get them in touch with the right people that do.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. What's an acre in southern Iowa go for?
Well, I'd say, kind of like if you were looking at them, mostly timber property in southern Iowa, with very little open ground, you're going to be probably anywhere from, depends on the seller, but there's going to vary, probably 2,700 to $3,000 an acre, something like that. Could be less.
Okay.
Whereas Northeast Iowa, it's hard to find anything, under $3. Most generally, even straight timber, if it's got much value to it at all, it's where it could be harvested in the next, 5-10 years. it's going to be over 3. Now you look at tillable ground, southern Iowa, you're looking at a good rule of thumb right now for southern Iowa might be, this is just a rule of thumb. It's not hard and fast rule. There's going to be, if it's tiled, how it lays, accessibility, waterways, all these different things factor in. But let's just say a good round number for it is, in Iowa, we've got what they call a corn suitability rating. And what that is, a CSR was what most people are used to hearing. Iowa State just, kind of changed that up on us and went to a CSR 2, which is supposed to be a more accurate soil type than the CSR was. So if you let's just say you had a 50 CSR 2 farm, that's what your corn suitability rating is. About $100 a CSR point. So about $5,000 an acre is what your tillable ground would probably be worth. It's just a rule of thumb. It's a general number. Now, if you get to central Iowa or spots in northeast or southern Iowa to where the CSRs are much higher, 85, 90 plus, they're probably going to get more than that $100 a CSR point if they're tiled and lay nice. So and the reality is probably, I would say it was about 4 years ago, almost 5 now, kind of when things started to kind of, the tillable ground started to lose a little bit of value here in Iowa. Those CSR 2 numbers were like $175 a CSR 2 point.
Okay.
So you can kind of see where the tillable ground's gone just due to, commodity prices.
Right.
Corn was over $7 a bushel, whereas now, it's closer to, 3.25.
Right. Well, huge variations there in what you could buy a piece of property for. Should I be considering, let's say I'm going to buy, 80 acres and I want to be able to hunt on it. I'd like to some rental or revenue from it. Should I be thinking about putting a building on that if there isn't one already?
I've had people ask me that question, and, every situation's different. It depends on, to me, I'd be careful where you put that building and if it's going to affect the hunting. If it depends on a few factors. I mean, if you're in an area that you've got large tract owners, that are practicing QDMA, and you decide to put a cabin right in the middle of your 80 acres, I think that's probably going to be, and it could be a mistake. It depends on how you want to spend your time with your family and your friends on your 80 acres. If that's what your dream, then man, go for it. But if your goal is to maybe turn it, in 5-10 years, I would probably say, you might want to rethink that building, either location or putting it on there at all. Because it could turn some people off. You just have to be kind of thinking about, how, if you're going to hold on to it long term, and that was your dream, and you just picture, yourself, hanging out in the cabin, during the rut with family and friends, and you want to be right in the middle of it, and go ahead, do it. But otherwise, if your goal is to turn it and move it to 160 or something, building that, building on there, you might want to be kind of careful where you put it.
Gotcha. I know you guys aren't bankers per se, but you have to have.
Dave's got a lot of money.
Dave's got a lot of money, so maybe we could borrow some money from Dave.
Yeah.
What are these pieces of property without buildings on them financeable?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. A good. So a lot of the people that we meet, most generally, already are kind of established financially. So you can be fairly creative. Like I've got one right now where a guy will do a contract. Depending on the strength of the borrower, he may still want. The magic number, most generally, and I say generally, is 20% down. If you've got a good relationship with your bank, most generally those guys will do that with 20% down. Some places might want 40% down. It just kind of depends. But most generally, if you've got good credit and you're a strong borrower, you could get away with 20%. Normally they'll amortize them over 20 years.
Okay.
Some might be 15. But sometimes they don't even do appraisals. I've got a guy that's ready to buy, and as long as he's not borrowing more than $250,000, they'll do what the banker calls a drive-by appraisal. He'll go drive by the property, make sure it appears to be what the buyer says it is, and with their good credit and 20% down, they'll even waive the appraisal. So, and we have contacts. Some bankers have no interest in loaning on land. And if you kind of get that feeling, you probably just maybe need to look somewhere else on the financing end. But, income from, of course, the bankers always want income.
Right.
They love that. So that'll always help. But, not always necessary. And so, you can always start off with a small one, too, and buy the right piece. And over time, kind of move your way up. But
gotcha.
And also the other thing to think about is, even if you have equity in another property or something, a lot of times they can use, tie up that equity, and you don't have to put any money down. If you don't want to put cash down, they can, many times use another asset tied to that farm.
Right. Gotcha. Is there any owner financing going on anymore?
Yeah, like I said, I got one. He never really thought about it, but I said, well, if it helps to sell it, and you start looking at the numbers of, how much extra money, the interest that they're going to make on that, on doing the financing is pretty substantial. I mean, it's kind of a big deal.
Right.
So once you start scratching those numbers out for them, all of a sudden, and there seems to be a lot less risk. I mean, you can write that contract so that they can't harvest trees without approval. So it's a lot different than a residential property where someone's living in your house and they could trash it overnight. Most generally in land, it's a little bit safer. If you got, even 10% down, normally they're not going to walk away from that. And they're, you just don't have the same issues. I mean,
right.
Most of those guys will take care of the property. They've wanted one forever. They get the opportunity and they're going to take care of it. So it absolutely can be done. Some guys don't, if you don't own it free and clear, you can't do a contract, but there are some opportunities out there like that. So.
Gotcha. I didn't know if that was still happening, especially for land. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other piece of this whole thing that you sometimes hear about is, you're talking about sometimes dividing up, pieces of property that belong to the farm, or two farms split, and there's like all this title work that goes into it, and you're wondering about your deed. Is it safe?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever bump into any issues with that kind of thing?
Well, yeah. One of the toughest things about our job is you got to be very careful about property lines and how you represent those property lines. Because many times we're taking the owner's word for it. In Iowa, a lot of times you can get on the assessor's pages and you see aerials, and it'll show you what the approximate property lines are. And so sometimes those things are just right on, and sometimes they're not. But that's definitely an issue. In Iowa, we're an abstract state, so there's there's always a history there. But you can absolutely get into trouble. We're very cautious about explaining to buyers that they could have a survey done, just to make sure, and that would help protect them, in a purchase. And heck, if you're making a strong enough offer, you might be able to convince the seller to even pay for it. But really, it kind of falls back on the buyer to do their due diligence, and they can get a title opinion to make sure we're getting clean title. We still have title insurance as well for some of that other stuff, but that is one of the tough ones in our business is property lines, because a buyer wants to know what he's getting, and trust me, some of the sellers don't make it easy for us. So that's probably the number one challenge, at least for me, in this business is knowing where the property lines are. And a lot of times there's not fences, there might be remnants of fence posts, but you got to get out there and try and make heads or tails of it to the best of your abilities. And then, let the buyer know, hey, if you really want to know where everything's at, you're going to have to pay for a survey.
Gotcha. Do you, as a real estate agent, when you're out in the field and you're looking at some of these large tracts of land, or maybe even just, they're not that big, but they're big to somebody that's residential, Is there? Do you use any of those like apps that like Hunt Stand or something like that, where you can actually go out and see the property lines, and how accurate are those?
They seem to be quite all right. I'm trying to think of what the name of the one. Onyx. Yeah. We put that on our phones, and it seems to be okay. I think it gets you close. Mm-hmm. Like if a guy told you there's a property pin, in this southeast corner, I would trust it to get me, or he says there's a T-post, or there's an old wooden corner post, and there's a survey stake in the ground. I'd probably trust it enough to go find something like that, but it's one of those things where, man, it makes it kind of tough. Right. But we do use those a little bit. Google Earth we use all the time too, but it doesn't really show you property lines. We'll kind of take a mix of the assessor pages and look at those a little bit, but they're not always exactly right either. And in most cases, if there are fences up and they're kind of what everybody's agreed to as the property lines, the survey won't matter anyways. That's what eventually that becomes the law of the land. So
gotcha. Okay. Well, it's fascinating. I think some of these topics are not unique to Iowa. I think it's pretty much anywhere you're trying to buy some kind of recreational property, especially for hunting. So that's fantastic, and I think we probably go on for a very long time. We've gone on for quite a while, but I want to get into some of your hunting, and I figured out what you guys are doing. This is like a giant scouting adventure for you. Right? This isn't real estate. You're scouting for better properties to hunt. That's what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, we learn a lot, that's for sure, and it's fun. It's exciting. But no, we got bills to pay. Kids at home, they need new shoes, so we got to turn the stuff. So
no, I'm kidding.
I know.
I'm just picking on you, but it must give you a fascinating viewpoint of. I mean, you look at a lot of properties, and you would as a real estate agent because you got to sell them, but you also must be digesting a lot of the content that you're taking in. I mean, you're visually looking at. Well, here's a deer run over there. This is what they're doing in this particular part of Iowa. So the strategies and techniques that you must employ in this area are probably unique. If they're on this farm and I get to hunt the farm next door, they're probably a similar herd, and this is kind of their travel route.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
I want to get into some of the things that you've unraveled as you've gone around Iowa trying to sell property, and get into some of your hunting strategies and techniques that you've developed for yourself.
Well, I remember I had one farm listed, and there was a beautiful home on it, and she was widowed, super, super sweet lady, and she moved to Minnesota, and she said, if you want to hunt it, go ahead. And she said, you can stay in the house. I'm like, okay. Wow. So I mean, just this huge 300 square foot, beautiful home that I'm sleeping on a sleeping bag in the floor, but I was hunting I know it was the biggest buck of my life. And I'll never forget this day. I think about it almost weekly, but if not daily. But real heavy snow coming down, zero wind, and I had a decoy on the edge of a cornfield. And all of a sudden I saw him. He was heading down a ravine. He was about 40 yards behind me. So I hit the grunt tube, and he started coming in, but he was really slow, and he wasn't acting aggressive at all. And especially once he saw the decoy. So I'm thinking, man, he's gonna bolt any minute. He got, if it was 10 yards, I'd be shocked, but it was my first window because he was coming in behind me. And so I just started to draw my bow back, and I was going to wait for that right minute. Well, the snow had built up on my sleeve, and it cracked. And I'll never forget that deer turning and looking at me. I mean, I wasn't even at quarter draw yet, and it spun out of there. So I, of course, tell everybody about it. And I got to know the farmer that was the neighboring property, and I was telling him about this deer, and I actually showed him a picture of it. And the next day he wrote an offer on that property. So, gotcha. It definitely helps, but it's also, I mean, it sounds like, a lot of people want us to hunt their property, especially if they're not hunters. But the downfall is you don't really have a history. So you really, I mean, you guys, you do your scouting, and, if you hunt the same farm a couple years in a row, you kind of get an idea of their bedding habits and, where they're running during the rut. But, if we're listing a farm right now, we got our summer scouting and that kind of stuff. Hopefully it's sold by the fall, but sometimes it's a downfall, I guess I'll say that. And, Jake and I, at the beginning of this year, I know we hunted a lot of our own personal, not our farms, but just ground that we had history with. And then I know Jake started hunting a property that he had listed, and he was calling me every night saying, man, I saw this one and I saw this one. And you almost get confused and maybe lose sight of why you're out there, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah, I forget why you're there in the first place.
Yeah.
That's funny. What kind of styles and strategies of techniques do you employ in that part of the world? And are you tree stand hunters, ground hunters? What types of things do you look at?
Bow hunting mostly.
Bow hunting.
At least for us around in the office.
Yeah. I mean, I know I can speak for both Jake and I. That's where our passion lies is bow hunting.
Okay.
It's mostly tree stand hunting just because that's what we like, but you can certainly hunt out of a ground blind. My son he just turned 10 and he's not pulling back that energy, shooting the kinetic energy out of his bow yet that I feel comfortable with him shooting a deer ethically. So I still have him using a muzzle loader. And so with him, I'll usually hunt out of a ground blind. That goes for turkeys. With turkeys, if we're bow hunting, usually we're in a ground blind. But if I can get up in a tree, I love it. Again, that comes back to the very beginning of this where, I love watching the world awake and I love getting down at the end of the night and going home and telling my family my story or Jake or, any of my friends. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So mostly bow hunting, mostly tree stand hunting. And do you guys get into scent control? Are you fanatics?
I'm crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. My wife thinks I'm insane.
Okay.
I wear rubber gloves. I mean, I'm crazy about it. And, we were talking about this not too long ago, but I honestly can say that this was my best year bow hunting ever without harvesting a mature buck.
Gotcha.
Just the sheer numbers. My target buck was within 20 yards 3 different times. I never got busted, honest to God, once for scent, but I played it really smart this year. I was seen in the stand. I might have been seen moving. Doe would bust me, but it was never a scent issue. So yeah, I take it to a little bit of extreme.
Okay. Can you break that down for us? Like how extreme and what specifically are you doing?
I like I said, I'm very adamant about the rubber gloves. I mean, I wear them when I'm getting dressed. I wear basically pajamas out to the wood in my truck. Okay. Get out and slip on my clothes. Ozone generated gear bag has been an absolute game changer for me. Yeah. Obviously it works, it gets rid of bacteria, and then so much of bow hunting, I think, is a mental game, focus. And if you feel confident, you're going to get it done. And, that's certainly added bonus to the way I hunt. I mean, I'm already wearing scent lock. I mean, you guys, if you told me that you guys could sell me something, I'd buy it. I mean, that's how I want to get as close to as many deer as possible. I want my kids and my family to do the same thing. And I'm extremely adamant about, washing my clothes but that scent crusher stuff, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to check it out, but it's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a believer in the ozone, especially in that quantity. It's fascinating stuff. It really does.
But you just got to kind of control the things you can control, because there's a lot of things we have no control over when it comes to hunting whitetails or even turkeys. Right. And so if you can kind of control the things you can control, I think it definitely will help you out.
What about camouflage? You get into particular camouflage. Is it important to you?
I think it's definitely important. In Iowa, we start with a ton of foliage in the early season. It's still really green. And, I look for something with a little bit of a green pattern, whether it be, Realtree Extra, Mossy Oak. There's so many great companies out there now that make camo. It's hard to pick. But as the season wears on, you start getting the brown leaves, and then the green is doing you really, not a whole lot of good. And we could probably do a whole episode on camo, but is it really super important? Well, I'm going to take every advantage that I can. So
sure. And how about your bow setup? What are you guys shooting for bows?
I got the old Matthews Creed. It's been good to me. So
yeah.
I might make a change for this next year, but as Dave said, there's a ton of great companies, and that goes for bows too. And it is mental, and having just what I've learned. I didn't even really start hunting deer until 2008. I was a pheasant hunting guy. Pheasant population took a crash when land prices went up and all the row crops started taking over the CRP. And so, I'm kind of, I haven't even had 10 years of experience, and I've really been soaking it up and learning quite a bit. But that confidence is what confidence in what you're using and what you're doing, I think means a lot. And, it's important to have that plan and then see how your plan unfolds. Because if you're just going out willy-nilly, I think it's kind of hard to learn. So what I've learned is that I've got the Matthews bow, and I've shot a couple other ones, and it's been good to me, and I feel confident with it. And I guess that to me is my number one priority is confidence. So
gotcha.
Yeah, I just actually I have a Matthews Halon 6 that I absolutely love, but I just actually ordered a Expedition. So I'm excited to get that and shoot it. I shot them all at the ATA show, and man, there's, like Jake said, there are some great bows out there, and they're all great. It's just, you can't push one because my bow might not be perfect for you or Jake right. And it's what feels comfortable. And that new Expedition is sweet.
Yeah. The technology of today, there's so many good bows out there. It's insane.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And, you always think every year, like, how could they possibly come up with something better or faster? And, I'm not a speed freak by any means, but they still do it.
Right.
They still are getting faster and faster, but you just think at some point they're going to peak. Well, it hasn't happened yet.
Right. It's amazing. How about, you said you're a big tree stand guys. What kind of tree stands are you hanging?
Well, I'm a little biased. I work for Advanced Takedown Tree Stands. But the reason I work for them is because I do believe that they're the safest and easiest to hang. Absolutely love that stand. It's a 3-part system where our motto is hang the stem, not the stand. Yep. So you're hanging your stem first, and it's just not so cumbersome. And then the beauty of it is you can put whatever the size of your property is, say 10 stems all around the property or all the farms that you hunt, and just take your platform and your seat with you, and basically you have 10 stands with the purchase of one and the purchase of some stems. So I'm an Advanced fan. I've used other stands before, but safety is a huge part for me. Like I said earlier, my son's getting into it. I'm hanging some double sets and taking him along, and I'm not a $59 stand guy. I mean, it's got to be safe and secure, and Advance has proven itself. And then I was fortunate enough to get a job with them. So
gotcha.
I've been kind of I was on with the Lone Wolf stands. Been really, really good. I think I got like 3 of those, and I've got 2 of the muddy hang-ons as well. I'm kind of more of a hang-on guy. I don't ladder stands are okay if you got to pop something up quick, I guess, or whatever. But I like the hang-ons personally, and I'm kind of switching over. Bought a couple of Advanced tree stands. Dave's tip to me. And,
imagine that, right?
They're pretty nice, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. My wife was hunting with me, and we were trying to. This is kind of our first year of toying around with filming, and they've got that. It's like a recliner up there almost. This seat, and she sat in it. I didn't know how good it was because I had the regular seat, which was nice. But then one day I went up by myself and sat in that. It's like a director's chair or something. And man, I couldn't believe it. All day sits are like nothing.
I only gave them one, so they were fighting over it.
Yeah, right.
That's funny.
No, they are nice because the way that they strap onto the tree is, man, that's just rock solid. So I was kind of impressed with that. So I'll be probably selling my other ones and going with advanced tree stands as well. But one thing is that I think is important is the safety aspect of it from our standpoint. Is if we sell a farm to somebody, they get tree stands, they get kids out, is the safety harnesses and the lifelines.
Right.
And that's one thing we 100% believe in. And I just think you're a fool not to use them. I'd hate to ever sell a property to somebody and not mention, at least maybe buy them a couple as a closing gift or something, just so they don't have an excuse, because you just hate to see somebody. And it's happened. It happened to one of Dave's friends in Northeast Iowa. And when he was there, how many other guys had fallen out of tree stands?
2 others like that same day.
Wow.
It's so important. I mean, we can't stress it enough. We're fortunate enough here that we have an affiliation with Hunter Safety Systems, and those guys they truly care. They want to know the stories, how we can help and how we can, stop somebody from falling again. And, it's one thing to say, yeah, we're here to save lives, but when they hang up the phone and then you're talking in an office and they still talk about it, I mean, that's when it's real,
Right. Right. The
Yep.
lifeline is probably one of the best, most simple inventions I think the hunter's seen in quite a long time.
Yeah, and we're not getting paid to say this, but
No.
But the reality is the reason why we spend so much time out there is the memories. It's who we are. It's all we got at the end of the day is the time spent out there, the memories that we share, the time spent with other people. Why in the world would you not? What kind of memory is that going to be if your best friend falls out of a tree? Over $100 harness and a $20 lifeline. It's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
It breaks your heart when you see guys losing their lives or breaking their necks or paralyzed falling out of a tree.
Right.
It's not necessary. So
Yeah, it turns some of your best memories into some of your worst.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
yeah, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely with you on that.
You hear about it every year. I mean, it's, one of the things I found is it's harder to get somebody that's been a bow hunter for 30 years to use a lifeline than somebody that's brand new.
Yeah, absolutely.
My uncle's a perfect example. He kind of took me under his wing when I was younger and really kept me bow hunting and got, he kept me bow hunting. So I feel, I love taking him with me now and I'm like, use that lifeline. And I'd give him some for gifts. And for the first couple of years, he just wouldn't use them. And I'm like, what is the hang up here? Why are you not doing it? I'm just not comfortable with it. I'm like, well, I'd be more comfortable if you were using it. So it's crazy how, it's so much easier to get somebody new in the outdoors to use the safety products versus somebody that's been in it for a long time and probably know people that have fallen out of stands but still don't use it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of perplexing, and I've never really understood that. But
Yeah.
well, we're still doing our best. We have our tree stand harness program we're doing right now, and we've been collecting, giving out any non-expired tree stand harnesses that we have still in the package from those tree stands that those tree stands come with harnesses.
Yeah.
And they're finding out there a lot of people don't even have a harness, so we've been collecting them from anybody that's donating if they're still fresh and in the package, and we're shipping them out to anybody that requests them. So hopefully we're doing our part. It's going quite well. It's actually much more popular than I imagined. So
We could probably send a few your way.
Yeah, I think we'll actually send some your way. But man, that's awesome that you guys are doing that. And again, it's just us as hunters, we truly do care about one another.
Right.
We might, if Jake shoots a 200 this year and I don't, there might be a little grimace on my face, but at the end of the day, I still want him to come home, and it's so important to be safe. And the fact that you guys are doing that, it's huge. So thank you very much for doing it.
That's good.
We'll send you some more if you want them.
yes, I'll take as many as you can offer. Yeah, well, there's.
All right.
I'm still stunned at how many people actually need them. So yeah. We'll keep doing our part. So I asked both of you guys to think of your most memorable deer hunt before we started. And I wanted to kind of touch on that. If you could open up and let me know who's going to start and where we're going to go.
Go ahead.
I guess I'll start.
Okay.
Guys, it's amazing how your priorities change when you have kids. This year is probably my most memorable, and it was with my son. And I've been fortunate to shoot some really nice deer. But the hunts with him, and like I said, he just turned 10. He was 9 last hunting season. And I had a farm that it wasn't for sale. It was something that I had a little bit of history with, and got him on there and got him in a blind. And what happened is he's seen some of the trail camera pictures of the deer that I have on that property. And it was almost disturbing to me to think that my 9-year-old is head hunting, and
Right.
He was passing on deer. So the first night we're out there, of course, the biggest one on the property steps out, but there was no shot. And so he was pretty hung up and dead set on trying to shoot that deer. And it was really nice weather. So the next night we go out, and it's a little bit slow. He passed on a bunch of does, and I'm telling him, shoot whatever you want. And so I said, well, I know there's a 6-pointer that's around here that's kind of a bully. He'd be a good one to take out. And he's like, all right. So we rattled him in, and like, it's that easy, right? But long story short, we ended up rattling him in, and his name's Dawson. I said, you let me know when you want to stop him. And again, we're in a blind. He's using the muzzle loader with a scope on it. And the deer keeps walking, and I'm waiting for him to tell me. And finally he's like, okay, well, I stop it. And let me tell you, if you never heard a muzzleloader go off inside of a blind, when you're not shooting it, I mean, I swear my right ear is still ringing. But
Yep.
So the whole blind after the shot dropped about a foot, and there was some fresh snow on it, but I'm thinking maybe it was a concussion or whatever. But, with a muzzleloader, you got tons of smoke.
Right.
So anyway, we go out there, and there's no blood. I watched the deer run. It didn't look hurt. So we got back after it. And as soon as we get back in the blind, I noticed that he shot through one of the poles. So that's what made it drop. But
Gotcha.
So we let it cool off for a day. And then it was the last day of the season that he could harvest a deer. And it was cold and rainy, windy. Typically something that a 9-year-old doesn't want to go out and sit in. And we were on the way out to the blind, and he goes, Dad, if it's got antlers tonight, I'm shooting it. I said, that sounds like a good plan, buddy. And he did. He shot a 4-point, and the thing had a huge body. And, I made sure that he knew that was a trophy, no matter what. I mean, whether it's a doe, they're all trophies. But the 2 deer that he shot in the last 2 years have trumped any of my hunts. It's just been very rewarding for me to see his passion for it. But I guess that's my story.
Very, very cool. Jake, what do you have for us?
Well, I haven't killed a bunch of giant deer. I'd have to say probably the most memorable hunt that I ever had was it actually resulted in a miss. And I was, like I said, I didn't start bow hunting until 2008. And so I've been learning quite a bit. And I think it was probably 2009. I met an old boxing coach of mine, and he lived north of me about 8 miles, and ran into him, and he's like, yeah, I got all kinds of, ground to hunt. So I went up there, and like I said, I don't have a lot of experience. I didn't know anybody other than my father-in-law that even hunted deer, because I'd always been a bird chaser, pheasants and ducks and geese and stuff. And so I got permission, put my stand in a bad spot, watched the deer go everywhere but by me. And I got frustrated, and I started asking a bunch of questions, and my father-in-law moved my stand, got myself into a good spot. I wasn't smart enough to know what I didn't know. And lo and behold, a deer that I had trail camera pictures of strolled right out in front of me. And he was at 30 yards, only I thought he was at 40. And of course, I shot right over his back. And I thought, well, no big deal. I'll see him again. Well, when I called my father-in-law, once I got out of there, he just started laughing and proceeded to tell me that I'll never see that deer again, which I did not. I went out religiously, hoping to see it again, but I learned a valuable lesson there. And it seems like that's been kind of my deer hunting history here since 2008. Has been a series of learning curves, and I'm thinking that at some point here I'm going to start laying them down, because I've experienced quite a few learning curves here over the last few years. So,
gotcha.
But I enjoy it. Like Dave said, this was the best year I ever had. I got pulled back on 2 deer that were, 160 plus. Just didn't get the angles. Got to where I needed to be. Kind of executed my plan this year, but fairly well, and just been soaking it up. But at the end of the day, creating that plan, and it's just a lot of fun. Whether or not you get to lay a big one down, I look forward to doing a lot of that in the future. But I do absolutely enjoy it. I enjoy taking the lumps and learning, taking the adversity. I've had lots of opportunities to shoot 140-inch deer, but I truly believe I have made a commitment to managing for age, no matter where I am. I get a lot of grief in southern Iowa for not shooting some of the deer. And, if they're old, that's fine. We'll take them. But, 140-inch, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, great, But, you set your guidelines, and then you try to stick to them as much as you can, so that you don't change once, you see that borderline deer, coming down the trail. So it's been a lot of learning for me, and I absolutely enjoy it 100%. So
very cool. Excellent. Both very, very, very good stories. Thanks for sharing those, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it. All right, you guys ready for their 10 rapid fire questions?
I think so.
Sure.
All right. Now, I did not prep you for this section, because I think they're better off the cuff. So what I'll do is I have 10 of them. I'll bounce back and forth. You can each answer the same question.
Okay.
Let's start with Dave. Dave, what is your number one hunting tip of all time?
Stay scent free.
Love it. Jake?
Gosh. Oh, man. Make sure to bring your release.
That's a good one. Yep.
I'd change mine if I could. Stay safe, wear your harness.
There's so many. There's so many we can pick from.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm with you. All right. Jake, what's that one thing that you can't live without if you're in your tree stand, or if you're in your tree stand, you realize you don't have it with you, you kind of, a little panic sets in because you just feel like you're not going to have a good night. What's that one thing for you?
I don't get too caught up in much of that.
Yep.
I don't really, I don't know. I don't know what it'd be, to be honest with you.
Okay, no problem. Dave, do you have one?
Superstitions?
Yeah. I've been out there a couple times where I forgot my grunt collar binoculars, and that about ruins my day.
Yep.
Rangefinder. There you go. If I forget my rangefinder, I know I'm in trouble.
Yeah, that's a big one for me too. Dave, how old are you today?
41. I had to think about it for a minute.
All right. What would the 41-year-old Dave Graham tell the 20-year-old Dave, knowing what you know today?
Take it slower and enjoy. Yep. Take life slower than I did, like, say, in my 20s, and just enjoy it. I was always so running around looking for success and on the road a lot. And I just, I settled down in my 30s, but the 20s were kind of a blur, just being on the road all the time. And
right.
So that would be it.
Gotcha. All right. Jake, what about you?
I'd probably just say relax. It's gonna happen. And to stay focused. I have a tendency to, when things don't always go my way, my mind kind of tends to wander. So I'd probably just tell myself to relax. It'll all be fine.
Right.
And just stay focused.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. Jake, what's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Boy, that's a great one.
Don't answer this.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just going to keep it fairly politically free, but I think as Americans, one of my big pet peeves that's going on right now would have to be that there's a lot of people that tend to want to give up freedoms that a lot of other people have paid the ultimate price for, that have died defending. And I'm a huge believer in freedom, and it really is a huge pet peeve of mine when people just want to give that up. So I'll just kind of leave it at that because you'll get me on a tangent and
Right.
you'll have to cut me off. We don't want to save cell phone battery will die. So it's just respect and freedom and what others prior to us have given us, and then those people that just are willing to just give it up. And I think it's way too important.
Gotcha. Very good. Dave, how about yourself?
I'm on the same exact lines. That's a huge pet peeve of mine. And, I have a lot of friends that are in law enforcement or, retired veterans, and just the kind of the lack of respect going around in today's society. They deserve all the thanks they can get, and on the show, I guess, gives us a little bit of platform to say thank you, all of you, for serving us and our country, and we appreciate it.
Very, very good.
Absolutely.
I love both your answers. All right, Jake, you meet a stranger in a hotel lobby at a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and you strike up a conversation. They ask you what you do for a living. What do you say?
I guess it's just as simple as I'm pretty to the point. I guess I'm not always the best conversationalist in the world. Small talker is not my game, I'll tell you.
Not your thing.
We all got our struggles in life, and that's mine. But I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of Iowa, and I got a small team of people that I work with, and I truly enjoy it. I love the challenges that come along with it, and it's a very rewarding lifestyle that we get the honor of living, and again, that kind of goes back to our previous conversation,
right? Is
that others have come before us and given us this opportunity, and I think that being a real estate broker is it's just a great life.
Very cool. All right, Dave, what would you say?
I guess it depends. If I'm out of Iowa, I sell tree stands. If I'm in Iowa, I sell farms, and then I can sell you a tree stand for your farm. No, it's again the real estate that's my job. That's what really pays the bills, and I'm very proud to say where I work and who I work for. I'm blessed to be with this company, and to have Jake as a mentor has been priceless.
Very, very
First time I ever heard that.
See, we only compliment each other.
My goodness, a lot of firsts when you're on the radio.
Yeah,
I like this. All right, this next question's easy. Dave, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh man, you guys don't want to know. I'm on this 24-day challenge right now, and so I'm turning a new leaf. So this morning I had peanut butter on a low carb wrap. Sound good?
Yeah, you had me at peanut butter, but you lost me at low carb wrap. I'm not sure what that means. All right, very good. Jake, how about yourself?
Well, it was just simply 2 eggs. We've got a bunch of chickens at home, and they are pounding out the eggs right now, and we are getting backed up. So
nice.
Every chance I get, I eat eggs.
Nothing like a good farm fresh egg. Absolutely.
Well, it's boring, but it is reality.
Right. All right. Jake, you get your own billboard on the side of a highway, and it's a blank canvas. What would you put on it?
Wow. I'd probably it'd probably have a picture like what we've got in the office, of a scenic northeast Iowa hillside with a little bit of timber and a farm, and it probably has something to do with the something to the effect of the memories that we make in life. How do you want to spend your life? What do you want to? It's really all we have is memories, and we talk about that a lot around here. And sometimes you got to take a little risk. Sometimes the 40 acres in the house I live on, gets a little expensive, but I've got 5 kids, and at the end of the day, it's allowed them to have the horses that they want. I get to see them really become the people that they really want to be. And so, I'd have to say it'd be something like that. It'd be a pretty scenic picture, and just something alluding to, what the land affords us and the memories and the lifestyle that we get from that.
Gotcha. Very, very nice. Dave, how about yourself? What would you put on your billboard?
Jake and I are pretty similar when it comes to that kind of stuff. Again, it'd be just a beautiful landscape of Iowa. But, it wouldn't be advertising for me. It would be a thank you to, our veterans and service men and women.
Gotcha. Yep. Very cool. All right, Dave, if I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Ryan Wheelington.
Right. Gotcha.
Ryan is the owner and the inventor of advanced takedown tree stands. And we're talking about a family man here whose family truly comes first, but yet he's built one of the most innovative products to hit the market in the hunting industry. But I see success more as the life you live versus maybe the money you make. And, Jake would fall into the same category. I mean, we're talking about just great husbands, great fathers. And, I just want to emulate that.
Gotcha. Very cool. Jake, how about yourself?
Boy, that's a tough one for me. Because normally I don't like to talk about myself, but in this particular case, I look at my own life, and I think I've been pretty successful. So I guess I'm normally not a big self promoter, but this time when you asked that question, that's what popped into my head. I look at my family, my wife, and truly how blessed I am. Honestly, I just think that when I think of success, that's what I look at. Is those relationships with family. You can have all the money in the world. Some of the craziest, loneliest people I've ever met have a lot of money.
Right.
And so it's not about the money on the success, but I truly believe I've had success in life, and with the help of my wife, we've got a great family, and I guess that's what I would say.
Very good. Love it. All right. Jake, what's a day in your life look like?
Well, it can kind of vary quite a bit. The thing with our business is sometimes you just can't, you don't even have time to really react or think, because you've got to be, meeting somebody in one county to look at a property to list for sale. And then, you got to be running to show another property, you get an offer come in. That's the one thing with our business is you never know what's going to happen. So the day can vary, quite a bit, but, I like the structure. I like structure, and it's a crazy business, and we don't get a lot of it, but, the ideal day would kind of include, that listing opportunity, and, presenting an offer. I normally, depends on the time of the year. It's a lot easier to get up, when the sun's coming up at 6 o'clock in the early summer, in the morning, than it is right now. And so, I tend to get to the office just a little bit later, this time of the year, normally anywhere between, 7:30 and 8:30, and, try to take care. Normally I got something, laid out that I just, as a priority first thing in the morning, I need to get taken care of before the emails and phone calls and helping other agents starts in, because then, I get kind of sidetracked. But I normally try to be home, at supper time if I can. Sometimes that's not possible, but that's what I like to be able to do. The weekends I'm fine with working, showing property, presenting offers, whatever we got to do. But I like to be at home with the family as much as possible. So. Very cool.
All right. Dave, how about yourself?
Very similar, obviously, with the same jobs that we do. I take great pride in being able to see my wife and kids head to school. My wife's a teacher at the school that my kids go to. So, typical day, see them off, and then head to the office. Sometimes I wonder why I have a home office, because it seems like any real estate work I do is here at our actual office. But it's amazing how many people email you after midnight. Mm-hmm. So you open your computer in the morning and you have a ton of emails to respond to, and start checking, new listings. It might not be our listing, but we might have a buyer for it, so if there's something new on the market, we'll definitely, that's our job. We're working for somebody that wants to buy a piece of land. So that's usually what the first half of the day consists of. And then, like Jake said, we're either showing properties or talking about it, and if nothing else, like we had an awesome meeting today with a marketing company that I think is going to do great things for us. So, but it's always different, and that's what I love.
Gotcha. Very good. All right, let's switch it around. Dave, what's a deer hunting day in your life look like?
Oh man. Well, I'm up and at 'em pretty early. I like to get in about probably half hour before legal shooting time, which is a half hour before sunrise.
Yep.
If it's the rut, I'm definitely an all day sitter, and feel that I do my homework. So I'm always packing a sandwich or a couple Gatorades and waters and but I find myself working quite often in the tree stand. That's the great thing about this business also, is a lot of it is,
right.
Well, I mean, a lot of it's social media for your marketing, and a lot of it's via email. Sure. and text message. So, I can actually call my tree stand my other office, and not too many people get offended.
Which would be another good tip, is to make sure you turn your phone on silent before you get to the tree stand.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always a moment of panic when all of a sudden and it never fails. It always seems to go off when there's deer around you.
Oh yeah. But and then the greatest part is when I pull in my driveway and it's usually my son runs out and, did you get one? And no, and well, did you see any? And oh yeah, I saw some. And well, why didn't you shoot them? And so we're still working that out. But just. I love sharing stories with family and friends, so that's usually what the night entails.
Very cool. And Jake, what's your deer hunting day in life look like?
I'd say it's fairly similar. I'm completely fine. I did more all day sits this year than I ever have before. I guess I'd like to maybe get. The only downfall that I had this last year is I wasn't really committed to a solid plan. I was, being is that, you're in real estate, we have so little control over our schedule, and you plan to go out one day and then bam, you got to take care of work, And so I never get to hunt and plan my hunts really the way I want, unless I plan to take off and go 2 hours south and, and just let everybody know, hey, I'm not going to be around. So, but most ideally is I'm hunting around my house. I've got ground, I live on 40 acres and I've got ground, right in the same mile that I can hunt. So normally that's what that would be is I'd get up, and early do the morning hunt, for as long as I can until I got to get down and get into work, try to get my work wrapped up and try to get back out for, an afternoon hunt. So, that normally, I don't normally get to do too many all day sits, but I got to kind of pick and choose my battles. But I think for this next year, I'm going to be a little more rigid on my schedule. A lot of the guys that want to buy hunting properties get kind of, a little antsy during hunting season. So a lot of times, but that's the way it was this year, was listings. I'm not complaining, showings during that peak rut, situation. So I didn't even really get going until probably November 14th, I think, was the first day that I got up north to go. And then, kind of catching the last few days. So I guess but most generally it's nearby, a morning and an afternoon hunt.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. All right. Those are the 10 rapid fire questions, guys. You did fantastic. And
We survived.
Thanks for letting us into your world a little bit more. Very, very nice. Where can we find more information about your real estate company and your agency?
Yeah, we're on Facebook. We've got Huff Land Company Facebook page. Our website is hufflandcompany.com. We've got all of our listings and a little bit of information about us individually on the website. The Facebook page, we'll normally try and post some stuff of interest. We do put some residential stuff on there as well. But acreages and farms is kind of how we've branded ourselves, and our followers kind of respect that on Facebook. So, and we'll be getting into a little bit, the thing is that we're going to be dedicated to this year is more video blogging on the land acreage and even the residential side. But that's going to be a big part of this upcoming year is trying to get information out that way to folks to be of some kind of help and service, give a little guidance in certain situations to maybe be a help to people. So.
Gotcha. Very, very cool.
So the YouTube channel will be getting a little busier.
I love it. Love that social media stuff when it comes to anything whitetail. Excellent. Yep. Excellent. Guys, this has been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. I've learned a ton. This has been fantastic, and I really enjoyed listening to how you guys go about finding property and what a buyer should think about and what a seller should think about, and kind of how you fascinated with the whole thing about the walnut trees and the timber and the actual income producing properties that you can make out of land. I had no idea. It's fascinating.
Yep. Well, we appreciate your platform and you having us on.
I knew that the topic of buying a recreational piece of property that you would use to hunt on would be an interesting topic, but I had no idea that we'd go on for almost 2 hours talking about it. And I didn't feel like we covered everything in as much detail as we could have. So I hope everybody appreciates the show because I certainly got into it, and that's probably the reason for the length of it. But just some really good topics that we covered, anywhere from game management to return on investment when you buy a piece of property to how you can generate revenue, actually getting people to come in and take care of some of the timber that's worth money, doing row crops. And Dusty, you're familiar with all that stuff. I don't always think about land generating some kind of revenue, but it can. And you've lived a life of this, Dusty, where you actually generate money from the things that grow out of the ground all the time. And it's not something that's not quite familiar with here, but for you, that's been a life.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Ohio is full of farming and agricultural, and it's something that I recognized, what they was talking about right away, and there's government programs that, you can plant native grasses and let area grow up, and they'll actually pay you for the land that you use for the native grasses and the CRP, and it's pretty amazing what kind of programs are out there for the farmer and for the landowner and for the person that's just an outdoor enthusiast that wants to get back to conservation and the environment.
I thought it was very interesting, and I would imagine growing up in that environment, Dusty, you kind of just kind of put it in your head, and you don't really think that you know what you know, but you do. You know a lot about that. So for us that aren't familiar with that, it's an extremely interesting topic because we don't live it every day. So it's just fascinating. I'm glad you've always shared what you know about that with me, and it was nice to dig deep with Dave and Jake.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely something that, if you've been around it, it's just, second nature to you. But if you don't know anything about it, it's always nice to have somebody, I'm far from a highly educated person to talk to about agricultural, but I can probably hang with most of the guys that are super educated about it. I've not been to school for it, but been raised around it and grew up on a farm, and my dad still farms today, and I still farm, and animals, and it's just a way of life.
Right. Yeah. You learn a lot when you're right in it instead of just studying about it. Probably learn a lot more about it actually when you're living it day to day. Sure. Yep. Very cool. Speaking of topics of learning, Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, and I'm going to refer to a few questions I've had over the last few weeks of whether or not to leave your tree stand out in the woods or not.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
Personal preference on my end, I take everything down, bring it in. Not only, it gives you the option next year to reset a set that maybe you need to make some adjustments to. If you just left it hang there, you'd probably just climb back up and hunt the same stand. But, not only that aspect of it, but as far as weather and the sun and the rain and the snow and the conditions, and the Mother Nature will tear a stand up faster than anything. So a safety aspect comes into play when you leave your stands and leave them hanging in the tree or ladder stand or a climb or whatever you got out there. Even your ground blinds, the weather tears them up, and that stuff all costs money. And it's that time of year to get your stands down and bring them in and store them in a dry place. Even if you can just throw them up in the rafters of your garage or wherever you can make the effort to put them up and keep them nice. And then you're not going out and then having a cable that's rusted out break on you on a hang-on stand, or you get to climbing and the ladder sticks, one of the steps break off and you skin your leg all up and you fall. And just go out and get your stands down, bring them in, and some people's got a lot of stands, and I understand that. I've got quite a few myself, but I try to make room for them in a dry storage area and get them out of the weather. That's rough on them, and it's definitely a safety factor. So get them stands down.
Gotcha. Great tip, and something I often overlook. But yeah, I'm with you. I need to get out there and go grab my stuff. Very good. Very, very good. So, Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in Big Buck Studios with me?
You can shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram, Twitter, @ChasingAntler, or shoot me a message or give me a like over at Chubby Tines Outdoors right there on Facebook. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
I would email me at jay@bigbuckregistry.com. Definitely the best place to reach out to me, and I will return every email that I get. You can always leave us a voicemail at 724-613-2825. We don't answer that line directly, but we do get the messages, and we do return phone calls. So if you'd like to reach out over there, if you'd like to become a part of the contingent of the Big Buck Registry over on our Cornerstone flagship Facebook page, where we are about to turn 250,000 fans. Go to bigbuckregistry.com/Facebook. Like Facebook, we are on all other social media platforms for the most part. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, and we're on Google+. We're actually over there as well. You can listen to this show on iHeartRadio, on iTunes, Stitcher, Blueberry, and pretty much any other directory that grabs that RSS feed and rebroadcasts all of our content. So if you just Google it, you'll find lots and lots of places to listen to the show. But on iTunes, if you wanted to go directly, if you're an Apple user, it's bigbuckregistry.com/iTunes. If you're an Android or Google user, probably Stitcher is not a bad choice, bigbuckregistry.com/Stitcher. And we actually have an app for both Google and for Apple. And it's bigbuckregistry.com/app if you'd like to download the app on your iPhone for free. Or if you want to go over and download the Google version or the Android version, it's bigbuckregistry.com/G-app. I think that's pretty much all the places we are hanging out. If you would like to become a donor, a patron of this show, we can always use your helping hand, and it doesn't have to be much. Whatever you can spare, we would love to get some more donations going, and we do have a budget. We do have costs associated with the show so that we can bring you that good content each and every week. And we have a place set up where you can actually go to help and participate in making this show possible. And if you go to bigbuckregistry.com/pledge, you'll see all of the different levels that you can pledge to. So I think that is everything we need to cover. Dusty, it's been a great show, and unfortunately we have to go, but we will be back next week. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
This is the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. See you next week.
Can't wait.